Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 989 of the Juicebox Podcast. Today on the show, I'll be speaking with Kevin. He's a 52-year-old Kevin is 52, diagnosed at 45 with adult onset type 1 diabetes. And he tested negative for antibodies. Isn't that something? Okay. He's a healthy guy, a hiker, and he's blindsided by the diagnosis. He also has Raynaud's. And he farms his own chickens and pigs for food. I love this episode. Kevin's terrific. You're going to love it too. Arden calls in the middle of it. I don't think you hear her voice. What else? No, nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. Don't forget to go to contournext.com/juicebox to get one of those contour meters and second chance test strips. Use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout at cozyearth.com to save 40% off your entire order. And please find the private Facebook group for the Juicebox Podcast. Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes on Facebook. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by US Med. You can get your diabetes supplies the same way we do, from US Med. Get your free benefits check now by calling 888-721-1514 or go to usmed.com/juicebox. Once again, that's usmed.com/juicebox or 888-721-1514. Get your diabetes supplies the way we do. From US Med.
My name is Kevin. I am an adult onset type 1 diabetic. I am antibody negative by a number of different tests and a long-time listener, first-time caller of the show.
I don't think anybody's ever said that before. Well, okay, Kevin, so wait a minute. So how old were you when you were diagnosed?
45.
How old are you now?
52 this year.
Really? You look terrific.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I told the doctor they had the wrong guy.
Yeah, I meant you don't look like you're 52 or anywhere near it, actually. But it's the blessing of your hair staying dark.
Yes,
it really is. I have it too,
and having a full head of it. Right?
Yeah.
I'm lucky.
Yeah, people look at you and they're like, "What are you, like 40?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's right. I'm 40."
I'll take it.
Yeah, no problem. Sounds good to me. So you were born a year before I was. Okay. So what did you mean you don't have any antibodies? How have you been tested?
So I don't remember the details. It was 7 years ago, but I remember having the standard antibody test, and I was antibody negative, which meant there were no antibodies present at the time of my diagnosis. Right?
Yeah.
And then the doctor or the endo said, hey, there's another test that's more sensitive or more accurate or something. And I had that run. And that came back antibody negative again. And I want to say maybe a year later, they did it again just to check and see if anything had shown up.
But they're very confident you're a type 1.
Yeah. My body produces, I had a little bit of a honeymoon period for a couple of years, but my body produces below the minimum recordable amount of insulin on the creatine test or whatever they do.
C-peptide?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. Creatine. Are you lifting for bulk as well?
No.
I'm not either. Was there any indication that something like this could have happened as far as like family history goes?
I got to tell you, this really blindsided me. And it's one of the reasons I wanted to come on the show, because I felt so adrift and lost and clueless. Mm-hmm. So I really have no family history. A paternal great-grandfather had what they called the sugars back, at the turn of the last century.
Yeah, right.
And that's the closest. And I have a cousin that's a type 1 diabetic, but he has been since he was a kid.
Yeah.
But other than that, like, I've always been a really active person. I've always eaten better than most people I know. I'm not like a food Nazi, but I always ate 3 squares. I always ate from the 3 food groups, right? And I tend to be a runner, hiker, biker kind of person. I'm not, a triathlete obsessive person, but I get my kicks and really enjoy staying active. I take the stairs 2 at a time. I park as far away as I can, and I walk everywhere.
So at 45, is it fair to say you hadn't been sick in your life much?
Not with anything like this. I started getting some exercise-induced asthma in my 30s,
Mm-hmm.
and a little bit of Raynaud's because I'm an old ice climber, and I had froze my hands a couple times. So 2 autoimmune kind of things started popping up in my 30s.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this really hit me like a ton of bricks. I had no family history. I'm not like a soda or a junk food guy.
Yeah.
Staying active, it was kind of crazy.
And I can tell by the way you're talking that your connection like mentally to diabetes is around like health and what you consume until this happens to you. And now I assume you think like, wow. And the Raynaud's is autoimmune.
Mm-hmm.
So how about other autoimmune stuff in your family? Thyroid, celiac, stuff like that? So
there is nothing. I think there's a couple. Yeah, my brother's good. My mom, I think, has a slightly underactive thyroid, but that didn't happen till later in life for her.
Did they ever tell her if hers was autoimmune? Did they call it Hashimoto's?
They did not call it Hashimoto's, and I don't remember her ever talking about it.
Okay.
I mean, the only other thing I could say is my dad got Alzheimer's, and I've heard that called diabetes type 3, right? It's sort of an insulin resistance to the brain. I don't know how much that plays into things.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard about it talked about like an inflammation issue too. So, yeah. Or so it's there. It's hard to see, really. Now, do you have children?
I do. I am the proud dad of 4.
Oh my gosh. Well, your penis works fine. All right. So,
well, the first 3 were adopted.
Oh, okay. Never mind. I'm sorry. I don't mean never mind.
No, that's all right. It wasn't me, so they tell me, but that's all right.
That's interesting. You adopted 3 and then had 1?
Surprise, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So it wasn't happening. You guys,
it wasn't. We kept getting pregnant, but it would never stick, honestly. And
no kidding.
It was a tough road, and we thought we would always adopt, but then we decided we need to adopt because we really wanted to be parents.
Yeah. Oh, well, first of all, let me apologize for my snarky remark. And,
no, I think it's funny. I get a kick out of it. It's an easy assumption to make, right?
No, yeah. Oh, wow, that's interesting. So how old are your kids?
I have the youngest is about to turn 11. I have twins that are 16, and my oldest just turned 18.
Wow. Is the 18-year-old and the twins, are they related?
Nope.
No. Okay.
Nope.
But the twins are definitely related. I'm just kidding.
That's right.
Yeah,
our oldest was international adoption, and our twins were a domestic adoption.
Okay. Now, do you have your youngest tested for antibodies? Have you thought about that?
No.
Okay. So
I mean, he's kind of young. We're certainly aware of it, and I think it's my wife works in the healthcare industry. She's a primary care kind of person, provider, and so I know she watches us, health wise for all that kind of testing and so on. She's a big believer in early diagnosis.
So you mentioned at the beginning then feeling adrift after all this happened. So I would like to hear about that. I'm going to tell you about one of the better decisions I made last year. I switched Arden's delivery of her diabetes supplies from where we were getting them to US Med. And US Med is more than edging out the service that we were getting from that previous company. Right from the comfort of your home or office, you can join over 1 million satisfied customers who rely on US Med for courteous, knowledgeable, and trained customer care. And their representatives are going to keep you up to date with your medical and diabetic supplies, all delivered right to your door. usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514 to get your free benefits check right now. US Med features a litany of things that you're going to love. How about an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau? They accept Medicare nationwide and over 800 private insurers. They carry everything from insulin pumps and diabetes testing supplies to the latest CGMs like the Freestyle Libre 3, the Dexcom G6, and a little bird told me the Dexcom G7 coming very soon. They always provide you with 90 days worth of supplies and fast and free shipping. Better service and better care is what you're going to get when you go to usmed.com/juicebox. On top of all of this, US Med is now dispensing Novolog Insulin Aspart and Humalog Insulin Lispro through their pharmacy benefits. What are you waiting for? usmed.com/juicebox, 888-721-1514. US Med is the #1 distributor for Freestyle Libre systems nationwide. They are the #1 specialty distributor for Omnipod DASH. They are the place we got Arden's Omnipod 5s from. US Med provides Arden with her Dexcom supplies. And they're the #1 fastest growing tandem distributor nationwide. I mean, I guess I could say it again, but are you just already online getting it done? Are you even listening to me anymore? Or have you already called 888-721-1514? Don't like the phone? usmed.com/juicebox. The other day I got an email from US Med and it said, you want some more supplies? I guess it was time. And I said, yes. I clicked the button and then they just showed up. You want to do it like that? It's pretty damn easy. usmed.com/juicebox.
Yeah. I mean, for about a year or so, I just felt amazingly low energy, which wasn't like me. Like I said, I tend to be a pretty high energy kind of go get 'em guy, excitable and all that. And I didn't know what was going on. I mean, my wife would tell me, I don't understand. You never want to do anything. You just want to sit on the couch. And I just remember being like, maybe this is what people mean about getting old. This must be what the 40s is. It's finally hitting me. Or, what people talked about. Once you turn 30, it's all downhill. I didn't know what people meant.
Yeah.
And so I started getting leg cramps, right?
Mm-hmm.
Waking me up at night. And I've paced people in ultra marathons in the desert.
Yeah.
I know what leg cramps are. And I tried treating them with my normal little tricks of electrolytes, and I'm always real good about hydrating and stuff, and they didn't go away after 3-4 weeks. They're waking me up, and I wake up in the morning feeling like I sprinted hills all night long. I'm like, what is this?
Yeah.
And I went to the doc and they pulled some blood and they said, well, your sodium's a little high, your potassium's a little low or whatever, but they're within range. And what's crazy is your blood sugar. You got a 12.2 A1C.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And you need to go see the endocrinologist tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. When you're a kid, they send you to the ER, and when you're an adult, they're like, just go find a doctor.
Well,
yeah.
Clearly, if my A1C was that high, I had some high blood sugar for a little while.
Yeah.
Then things started making sense.
Mm-hmm.
And initially I was diagnosed as a type 2 because I was antibody negative. And then I couldn't get like a CGM. I couldn't get a pump and all that kind of stuff. So I changed endos, and it did hit me hard though. It was like, what did I do? I immediately thought I must have done something, right? Mm-hmm. Started trying to think about, the hereditary side of things. Is it in my family somewhere that I haven't discovered? And that's when I heard about my great grandfather. But
yeah,
it was really, so I came home that night, the next day from the endocrinologist, and I told my kids, and I said, hey, this is weird, but I promise you, pull up a chair and watch the movie because I'm going to kick diabetes ass.
Mm-hmm.
All right. This is a challenge that I can manage and overcome. So let's, it's going to be different for me, and I remember for a while it would bug me, like when the grandparents would give the kids a basket of candy when they showed up at their house, and I'd be like, what are they doing? And I grew up with like a scratch baking mom who worked in a 3rd generation bakery, right?
Okay.
And I missed my baked goods, and my wife's family they supplied industrial bakeries. They ran a trucking company, right? She grew up baking and just, she didn't get, I tried to solve it, nutritionally. Yeah. I was like, man, I think I started on like 12 units a day of like long acting insulin, and I do a little bit of mealtime.
That was at the beginning. And were you limiting carbs?
Not. They told you eat 30 grams a meal or something, I think is what I was told, right?
Okay.
And I knew enough about nutrition to understand what carbs were and what foods had them. I didn't understand sort of glycemic index and all that jazz the way I do now.
Okay. When you sat the kids down, was it you just wanted to project, like, don't worry about this? Or were you projecting it to them, or were you projecting it for yourself? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, good question. Honestly, with the 3 older kids being adopted, I didn't want them to feel like another parental figure was not going to be there in their life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you're right. Part of it was also for me that I needed to kind of throw out the challenge and rise to the occasion.
So how do you do? I mean, I don't know what kind of direction you got from your physician, but was it enough to get you going?
Yeah. I mean, they taught me enough for the basics, and I wasn't getting the results I liked. I was like, oh, this is kind of all over the map. I don't know how to do this. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't heard your podcast yet. I was very sheepish about insulin. I was convinced that pump companies were, that the pharmaceutical industry did not have my best interests at heart, and that they were out there to just sell insulin and make a ton of money. And I still believe that to a certain extent, but I'm not quite as cynical about it. And so I was trying to minimize my insulin intake, and I think I used the Zone diet because I heard that was a diet built to stabilize your endocrine system. And that was just like always doing math, always like tons of nutritional research at every meal. It was arduous. So after about 3 or 4 months, keto had sort of started catching on, and I'm like, oh, this is the answer. Why am I pouring gas on the fire? Okay. Right? Why don't I let the fire burn, but I don't need to add fuel to it? So I tried that, and that was cool, but that was the hard part, right? That's when I started feeling really isolated, honestly, because it was really, this is, 6 years ago.
Right.
Keto was sort of a little bit of a blog thing, but it wasn't what it is nowadays. You couldn't find keto products at Costco or,
right. Yeah.
The supermarket or anything. And I remember my wife looking at me like, you are crazy, and my endo telling me, you can't fast, you're a diabetic, you need to eat. And it was just like, man, this is bizarre.
Yeah, right? You can definitely fast. That's I mean, if you're insulin,
well, you got to know how to do it. You can't give yourself insulin like you're going to eat and then fast. that's happened to me once. Now it's not the way I like to play.
I have to tell you, Kevin, you just said something that made me think about something I'd never thought about before. That as an adult, you might look up and think, oh, I see. Now I have diabetes and the man's going to take advantage of me. And they're going to sell me their insulin and their pumps and their this and their that. And that makes a lot of sense, and yet never occurred to me before that would be a situation. But when you said it, I just thought, I can see how someone would think that.
I'll tell you, a year into it, I was like, the ADA is broken. Modern endocrinology is broken. I can't believe they're telling me this is such a terrible disease to have. Feel bad for yourself, eat what you want, cover it with insulin, and give you very little guidance around how to do that, right? Yeah. Like your podcast, I'm not trying to plug you, but I have to give you credit where credit is due, man. It really helped me understand the basics of pre-bolusing. It gave me the courage to be a little bold with insulin, because you're like, man, unless you really mess up and give yourself like 50 units, you can always save yourself with a juice box, right?
Well, it
was pretty cool.
No, I appreciate that. I think it's interesting that establishment lines of communication will say the first part. They're like, don't you worry. You just do whatever you like. Don't change your life. Like, you can handle this with insulin. But then there's no second part that says, and this is how that happens. They just say you can do it. And then knowing full well, by the way, that most people are going to fail at it when they're trying in the beginning. They don't know enough about it. Their settings are probably wrong. Like, they're too new at it to get it right. So you tell somebody, don't worry about it. You don't have to change anything about your diet. just use insulin, but we're not going to tell you how to use insulin. Then you have a failure, and then there's a pathway. You decide it's a fork in the road. Well, I'm either going to limit my carbs because that didn't work, or I'm going to keep eating the way I was eating and just assume that, well, this is just diabetes and my blood sugar is going to be high. It's just interesting that they're willing to say so much of the first part of that statement, but not give you the rest of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. It's sort of a minimalist approach to the care that it takes to manage it.
Well, they give you half the information, and it's the half that'll hurt you if you don't understand the second half. But it won't hurt you right now; it'll hurt you later. So that's not on them. But they won't tell you. But they won't tell you how to pre-bolus, because if you do it wrong and get really low, well, then you're going to go back and say, well, these people told me to do this, and look what ended up happening to me. It's half-assed at best. So, yeah, well, I'm glad it helps. So how do you find a podcast?
Yeah, that's a good question. I can't remember where I heard about you guys, probably through Facebook or something.
Okay.
I honestly don't remember. I was listening to a lot of podcasts and stuff back then. I might have heard your name through something else or a web search.
What made you look for... I mean, what roadblock did you hit that you thought, well, I have to go find other people on Facebook or something like that?
I live in a pretty rural part of the Northeast, I'll say. And so, sounds like in our local system, there's a type 2 support group that you could join through the hospital, but there was really nothing for type 1s. I didn't know any type 1s. I felt totally like, man, how do you do this? And I'm sort of a thirst for knowledge, kind of eternal student mindset person. And so I was always hungry for knowledge, and figured out, that I'm new at this. I got to figure this out. I want to get better. Within 6 months, I think I had my A1C down to 5.5.
Wow.
And I generally, for the most part, keep it below 6, right?
Yeah.
If I look at time and range stuff, I'm usually, as far as the ADA standards, I'm usually 90% in range.
Between 70 and 180?
Yeah, exactly. And it takes a lot of work and vigilance, and it's like a part-time job you don't get a day off of, is the way I kind of see it. It's also made me a much healthier person. I'm super, super, concerned with, I raise all my own meat.
Do you really?
We raise our own pork, chicken, and turkey, and we have layer hens that give us eggs, and that's kind of fun. So I pay a lot of it. I eat a lot of meat and vegetables. I still avoid carbs. I don't eat starchy vegetables or not much in the way of sugar. And
I have to tell you,
and grains.
I'm forever confused about how things come together. Yesterday, my interview was with a woman who owns a farm in Washington State. And, cattle, pigs, chickens. And as she's saying that to me, I thought, oh, that was interesting. No one's ever said that to me before. And 24 hours later, you're like, well, we raise our own poultry. I'm like, wait, what? How is that possible?
Chicken are quick and easy. They're about 10, 11 weeks and they're done. The pigs are about 6 months. I've never done beef because I'm pretty active in the winter. I love to snowboard. And when you want to grow beef big, you have to winter them. And I don't want to spend my time mucking out stalls and taking care of
doing all that
big animals.
Have you always done that? Like what?
No, this is newer. I grew up in the Metro New York area. I'm what you call a hobby farmer. I'm a flatlander that moved to the mountains, and it's been about 10 years.
Wow, that's crazy. So you had kids in the city and you moved everybody?
We lived actually out in Utah for a while in the desert, because there are bigger mountains out there and more snow and fun stuff and rock climbing and all that. We moved back east to get closer to grandparents that we couldn't get to relocate, honestly. Right? You spend all your disposable income visiting family and not vacationing.
Right.
It's a different, right?
So you came
all
back.
You're free. So we came back, and we're foodies. I'm married to a French Canadian, right? Mm-hmm. I'm Italian. It's like food's a religion in our house. And so I was at a friend's house, and we had this chicken dinner. I was like, damn, this is the best chicken I've ever had, right? And it wasn't like the actual recipe. It was like, man, this is like tender and juicy and flavorful. And he's like, yeah, we grow it. I'm like, what? And he wasn't from like a farming background or anything. And I was like, wow. So I figured it out,
Right.
you know?
My father would tell me that his dad worked at a place where at the end of the week, this is a long time ago, obviously, if you worked well that week, your bonus was a live chicken on Friday.
Wow.
So my grandfather, who I never met, would apparently come home. He'd toss the chicken over the fence, like into the yard, and my grandmother would come out and these are not
Butcher it. Right.
She'd wring its neck and pluck it and make it for dinner. My dad would tell me that, and we were just far enough removed. Like, I'm your age. I'd be like, I don't know what you're saying, man. Like, that's crazy. But it was like a regular part of his life. And so
I do the butchering. I don't do the slaughtering. I hire a couple of people. I did slaughter my own pigs once or twice. It's a lot of work, honestly, and I'd rather be doing other things. So
yeah, well, that's interesting. So you live in a place where you can have somebody come to your property to do it, or do you take the animals to them?
You can do it either way, but I have people come to us and just take care of it.
I'm fascinated by that. Oh, okay. All right. So how are you managing? What are you using a pump? MDI?
Yeah, so thanks to you, honestly, I found looping.
Oh, no kidding.
So I became a looper with the old Riley link with the little screw cap covers on them.
Yeah.
And then so that's what got me into the pumps. I found a diabetic educator that convinced me. She's like, you might even be able to cut your insulin down with a pump, because the long acting, my honeymoon was waning with the insulin production. So I started using. At the same time, I found looping, so I'm like, I'm going to do this all together. I got looping, and by then, the new endo situation I was in had classified me as a type 1. She's like, you're just not producing insulin, so you might as well. I'm just going to say you're type 1. Mm-hmm. You're really a 1.5, right?
Did they use the word LADA?
Yeah, they did. But yeah, so I've been looping ever since. I'm on an orange link now, and I am I've been sort of off the reservation for a while as far as looping goes for information. And I just realized I got the email that the Eros is going away at the end of the year. They're not going to make it or whatever anymore. And I just learned that the Dash, right, means you don't need to carry the Riley link or the orange link around anymore.
you could get Dash pods and Loop 3 and you'd be able to do it. That's what Arden's doing now.
And I haven't updated my loop in so long because my Mac laptop got so old it won't update to the new operating system that you need.
You're going to have to pack up the wagon and go into town and find another one.
I have to. Well, I guess you could force update your Mac. It may run a little slower. But I've found out, like I actually, again, thanks to you, I hired Integrated Diabetes to teach me how to use and set up my link.
Really?
My Riley in my looping, because I didn't want to deal with it. I'm like, I had too much going on. I had 4 young kids and just life going crazy.
And it was working. And it's working, right? So
yeah, it's working. Great. Working great.
Good for you.
So I'm going to switch to the new Loop 3 and the Dash system and not have to carry the link around, which will be nice.
Yeah.
And see how that goes,
It's interesting because you have a slower way of talking. So you're drawing me into your pace, and it's giving me more time to think about what you're saying. And this is probably more than you care about what's going on in my head, but there's a reason I'm telling you. I don't normally spend time thinking, oh, there's a guy and he has 4 kids and a wife and he raises his own chickens and his health is where it is partially because of something the podcast did. It's too heady to think about. So I usually just roll through it. But I don't know, there's something about the conversation with you that's allowing me to slow down and feel it. And I'm having a much more emotional response to what you're saying than I usually do. I'm usually just like, yeah, that's great. Good for you. And we're happy we helped. Glad it helped, I don't know what it is. Maybe also I don't usually do video. So like looking at you is, this is obvious, but like humanizing you more. And,
sure.
Yeah. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I did a thing and this guy's life is better. And
it is.
It's just very, it's, I don't know, heady's, I guess the only thing that I'm coming up with, like I'm having trouble. Like you'd think that would be something I got past. This is like the 9th year I've been doing this, but,
yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I look at a guy like you. I can remember hearing, I think your podcast, I don't know, 5 years ago or whatever when I started looping, and you were like, one of your taglines back then was like, I need you guys to do this so that I can stop doing this podcast kind of thing, right? I forget exactly what you were saying, but
well, yeah, I was like,
man,
if you guys all figured it out, then I could stop doing this. And
right.
then more and more people came, close to 300 people a week joined the Facebook group. And
wow.
it's just new people constantly like coming in. The podcast, it leapt up it's pretty consistent the way it happens. Like you get well, not everybody does, but I get a surge in December, and then I get a leap in January. And so every year it jumps up. But I swear to you that in 2023, I saw an increase of like 3,000 downloads a day, which is significant. You know what I mean? Like because I think what happens is, I think the end of the year comes and everybody kind of gets into the holidays. And they say to themselves, like, I'm going to like, when the new year hits, the calendar is a big part of how people help take care of themselves, which I know is obvious because there's New Year's resolutions. I never really believed in that till I saw how the podcast grows and where it grows. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, and I think honestly, that's a historical thing, right?
Yeah.
Looking back, even before New Year's resolutions were a thing, I think there were just celebrations at the end of the year that created feasts, right?
Yeah.
And then there was tough times of the year when people were scrounging.
Yeah, it's like, hey, we got through. Now it starts again. Now it's time for me to address things. So anyway, long way of saying, I don't see how I can possibly stop making the podcast. Apparently, I'm going to have to make it, right up until the end. But I enjoy it a lot, so that's fine. And we do find new things to talk about. Like, I got a little behind on content for Jenny. So Jenny and we're making a new series. So I don't want to start putting it out till I have enough of it where I know I won't miss a week, right?
Sure.
So I didn't have like a management kind of episode this week. And I contacted Erica. She's the therapist that comes on who has type 1. And I said, hey, can you come on and talk about guilt and shame? I have this post in the Facebook group where people have been really open about how they've experienced it. Let's go through those. And so we recorded that yesterday. I put it up last night, which is not the norm for me. And this morning, there's a gentleman in there talking about like a revelation he had from listening to that. And it's just, it's just very interesting to see that there are other ways to help people with diabetes that aren't necessarily, pre-bolusing and that kind of stuff.
I have to tell you, bringing up guilt and shame, that I was certainly full of that, right? Because you feel like you're failing on your mission. If you threw yourself out there to your kids, I'm going to take care of this, and then you're not getting the results you want, or you don't know what to expect, right?
Yeah.
I'll tell you, one of the biggest things that helped me was stumbling into that Diatribe organization.
Sure.
Right? And that Adam Brown had put that book out for free.
The Variables book.
Right? Yeah. Oh my word. There were so many pieces to that. I felt like, how is every endo in the world not handing people this book when you go in?
Bright spots.
Why am I getting that silly food values book handed to me when I first get diagnosed?
It took me a minute to come up with it, but Adam's book is called Bright Spots and Landmines.
That's right.
Right. And he's a type 1. He's been on the program. He wrote the book, and Diatribe distributes it for free, I think.
They used to. I'd be amazed if they still didn't. I think you had to pay like $4 for shipping when I did it.
I'm looking right now.
Really helpful.
Free PDF on Amazon for $6, Kindle for $2. Listen to an audiobook free on Diatribe, or purchase it on Audible, Amazon, or iTunes. Yeah, they are obviously motivated to just put it in people's hands. Same thing for Canadians, UK, Australia. There's links here at diatribe.org. It's right at the top.
Yeah, that and reading, I'm on their daily or whatever, their weekly email. There's always good inspiration that they've put out. But that book, more than anything, I think really helped me deal with some guilt and shame issues around it.
That's excellent. Yeah, he'd love to know that. That organization is run by some really smart people.
I emailed him and thanked him, and I even got like a list. I was like, I'm going to try and help you put your book out there. I mean, I can build email campaigns. I can email endo offices and tell them about this resource. I started evangelizing it as best as I could.
That's lovely. What do you do for a living? Like, what kind of work?
I am a corporate recruiter.
Oh, okay. So you know how
I
to,
was an old traveling sales rep in the outdoor industry for a long time.
right.
And when the family started getting bigger, I needed to get off the road, and I found recruiting.
So you know how to reach people digitally. And
Yeah.
yeah. It's not as easy
And
as people think.
no,
Yeah. It's actually,
it's usually a numbers game. There's a little bit of persuasion,
yeah.
a little bit of luck.
I get cold emails all day long about everything. And there are,
We all do,
dude,
unless you live in a cave without Wi-Fi.
I want to be on your podcast. I'm a coach. I have this. I want to sell it. Like, I got to get on. Do you, can I have an ad? Can I do this? Here's what I want to sell. Like, and my point is that there are moments when I'm deleting them and I'm like, I feel bad for these people. Like, I know how hard they're trying. But you're just like, well, this isn't right. I don't even have time to tell them that. And then if you do tell them that, they take that as like a crack in the door. So that they come back and they sell you again. I'm like, oh God, I was just trying to be polite. All right, I'll stop that. But no, so did you have any luck doing that? Like contacting offices?
I didn't get far down the road. Okay. I was in between jobs when I had reached out to them.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't get too far. I mean, with all the endo people I brushed up against, I think they were really excited about it. Yeah. They had heard about it, but didn't, like you, they get assaulted with a million promotional sort of approaches.
People
to
say to me,
to hear my take on it and what a difference it made to me was really, I think,
it's
impactful.
Personal. Yeah. People say to me all the time, like, you should get the pro tip series or the bold beginning series. And they're like, doctor's hands. I'm like, you know how to do that. Go ahead and do that. I think I've come away understanding is that you mentioned it. It's a bit of a numbers game. And, I believe in the rule of tens now that I have a podcast a lot. You've got to reach 100 people to get 10 people to click to get one person to do like that. I believe in more than anything, but also just that things are spread most effectively by real people telling another person about it. It's just the way it works. So I don't think there's a shortcut where I think everybody's business would be amazing and everybody'd be rich if there was a shortcut to spreading information. So anyway.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well,
I have to say another thing that brought me huge comfort was when I first got the CGM. Mm-hmm. I remember after like a week with that thing, I got a Dexcom. I think it was a G5 then. I can't remember, and I'm on the 6 now. And I was just like, why isn't everybody given one of these upon diagnosis? This is the most educational piece of equipment in the world. Like it's almost. I was pricking my finger like 10 and 12 times a day. It's like you're creating biohazards with blood. Like, this is disgusting. Who wants to be near me, right? Like, this is crazy. And, I'm just trying to figure out what makes my stuff go up or down or sideways.
Yeah. Yeah. The finger sticks are like when you need an accurate number, there's nothing better than an accurate meter. But if you're just sticking throughout the day, you're trying to imagine what a puzzle looks like and you've got 10 of the 100 pieces of it. And it ends up being more confusing,
right?
Because then you see shadows. You're like, well, I was 180 here and now I'm 70 over here. And then you make assumptions about what happened in between and you really have no idea. So,
it's tough.
Well, I mean, cost is obviously, and the way the healthcare system's set up, right? But I think you're right. Like just from an intellectual perspective, like somebody should say to you, oh my God, you have diabetes. This meter that you attach to your body, this glucose monitor, and that should be the conversation right there. It's going to show you what's happening. And over time, we're going to learn how food and insulin impacts you, and we're going to make adjustments based on this information. Nothing more important than this. And instead, it's anything but. So, for most people.
Yeah, I mean, it proves to me, like when I don't get enough sleep, how much more insulin resistant I was. I was suspicious of that. I had heard about it, but then you see the numbers and you can't argue. And then, or days that I'm stressed, I have a lot going on or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Times in my life when I'm more stressed out, I can easily track the insulin resistance. I'm like, oh yeah, look at that. I got to hit it harder.
I think it's interesting for people to hear it spoken about simply that way too. Just the idea of Like, I don't know what happened. You hear people say all the time, like, I did the same thing I did yesterday, and now today it's different. But they don't see everything. Like, for instance, yesterday I slept 8 hours, and today I slept 5 hours. Or today I'm afraid that, we're all going to go broke and die because I can't afford, and I'm, and work is stressful, and, all the stuff that comes with it. And then you see a 40-point rise in your blood sugar, and, it's brilliant. Why are you able to figure all this out? Like, what is it about how your brain works that leads you to making these like leaps and then trusting them? Because I think other people see this stuff, but sometimes they don't put it into practice, or they don't believe it. I don't know a way to say that exactly.
My wife told me early on, and the longer I've sort of been saddled and been a type 1, she said, I don't think you understand how lucky you are. You've got resources. Right. I'm not eternally wealthy, but I'm a middle class guy, and I've got decent insurance, and I'll pay the piper for the rest of it. And then I've always been sort of a closet nutritionist. I've always been sort of a little bit fascinated by that. And I've always been into my lifestyle as far as being active. One of those continual improvement kind of nothing's ever good enough personalities.
Well, yeah, sure.
So you're always trying to problem solve and make something 1% better somehow or another.
Yeah. Well, I think that for me, I'm obviously was motivated by my daughter's health, but at the same time, I'm not good at just like, well, I guess this is good enough. Like, I don't think I have a mechanism that stops me and just says, oh, sit down now. It's okay. I
could take the next year off.
Yeah. We got 3/4 of the way there. Let it be.
Right. I've touched 1 million people. Yeah, I can skip it.
I just mean even in her personal life, like, you have a problem and you get like, oh, like when I saw the A1C when she was little, almost touched 9, and then we got it from 8 to 7. Like, I didn't see 7 and go, I did it. I was like, well, where's 6? And then, when I saw 6, I was like, well, where's 5?
Right.
Obviously what we're doing is working. Like, let's just keep tightening the screws and see what we can make happen here. Whereas I think, you mentioned, like institutions the other, recently too. Like, if an institution tells you a 7's okay, then you get to a 7 and you go, good, I'm done. That's it,
Another thing that had a big influence on me was I bumped into that Dr. Bernstein book. I forget the title of it, right? But he's a guy that sort of instilled in me, you know what? I might be type 1, but I have every right and every ability to normalize my blood sugar, right? Like, there's never been a better time. There is so much technology. I mean, there's ice cream that tastes like ice cream, right? Like chocolate that tastes like chocolate. The sweeteners are better, right? Like, the technology can inform you. It can take care of you while you sleep. I mean, there's so many, but I was like, I believe diabetics can normalize their blood sugar. Some of us, it's harder than others, for sure, but it can be done.
Right.
That's kind of my mission.
Well, I'll tell you, early on making the podcast, what I felt like I saw more than anything was that I had to get the information to people, and they needed to hear it without hitting some sort of a roadblock that would make them say, well, forget this. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
And I chose the idea of understand how to use insulin, and you could probably bolus for almost anything. That does not mean I think you should like eat a half a gallon of ice cream tonight when you're like, I'm going to have an after dinner snack. Like, it does not mean that I think you should have nachos and burgers and, fries
and live off of it.
Yeah.
Right?
And live off it constantly. I think what it means to me in my heart is you have a burger, like, and throw some fries with it. That's great. Not every day. Like, once in a while. And so I think in some people's minds, I was the guy saying, eat whatever you want, and here's how you bolus for it, which is what I'm saying.
That wasn't your tenet, though.
No, right? No. It was just understand how to use insulin. But some people take it as, I can eat whatever I want. And you can, by the way, but there are going to be, there's retribution coming if you decide to eat in an unhealthy way constantly. And so when people, I think there are some people listening to the podcast who would have heard you say, oh, I read Dr. Bernstein's book, or probably thought like, oh, Scott's probably going to say something about it. I don't give it. Like, if you want to eat low carb, I think that's amazing. You know what I mean? Like, whatever works for you, but let's not lie to ourselves about what's working. That's all. Like, if it's working, it's working. But, you know, if you eat a giant pancake at IHOP and your blood sugar is 350 for 5 hours afterwards, then that's not working. You know,
yeah,
like,
it wasn't because you didn't sleep last night.
Yeah, right. And don't get me wrong, I can bolus for IHOP. I don't know when the last time I've been there is, but like I could figure it out, and maybe everyone else could too. Just don't settle for less than healthy and use some sort of excuse to make it okay.
Yeah, I'm with you. No, what I figured out from sort of your messaging was you kept it so sort of elegantly simple. Was like, it's timing and amount.
Right.
If you read Adam Brown's book, Landmines, right, there's a million. He's got 42 factors or something that affect blood sugar, which is great for inquiring minds that want to know that. But when you simplify it to two things, right, most people can digest that. They can figure out, all right, well, I take a little more, or I take a little less, or I take it earlier,
right,
or I take it later.
Yeah.
And what do I do when I do take it later or earlier, kind of thing.
And it's my expectation that you can't just say, like, I'm sure that I could sit down and come up with a list of things, and if you did all of these things, you would have considered every possibility. But that's just not how this works. You know what I mean? Like, can you imagine like unfurling like a scroll at the oh, you know what this could be? I did have a cold last week. Like, you know, so.
Oh, right. Yeah, you'd have some giant matrix of different influences on your blood sugar, right?
So you put the things into the podcast, and so that hopefully people sort of pick them up almost unknowingly. And so that when they get into a situation, maybe it occurs to them and they go, oh, you know what this could be? I'm not hydrated. Or like, you know, whatever it ends up being. Like, I don't know, I'm stressed out or blah, blah, blah. I want to say the things enough times in enough different ways that as many people as possible have an opportunity to absorb it, come away with something that will help them. So I don't know. Hopefully that helps, because you've said a couple of things in your conversation that I was like, oh, that's important. And I hope people hear that. But I mean, if I got a hold of you and I said, hey, Kevin, just come on for 5 minutes, tell me all the important things, you know, you wouldn't know.
Right. Couldn't do it.
Yeah. The conversation's what leads to it, you know? So anyway, right. Let's say I want to have a chicken and I want it to give me eggs. Is that a thing I can accomplish in my life?
Easy. Yeah.
It's easy?
It's so strange, right? So get this, chickens are born with every egg they're ever going to lay. It's all about how quick you squeeze it out of them.
No kidding.
They need a certain amount of daylight to do it.
Okay.
Right. So if I don't have, where I live is pretty far north. And so if I don't have enough daylight hours, I have to put a light source on for them. And it doesn't take much. There's, you know, like even I think Williams-Sonoma sells backyard coops. You could build a coop no bigger than a doghouse. You know, each chicken lays roughly an egg a day, and they're good for 3 to 5 years as far as laying.
My neighbors aren't going to hate me?
Not unless you had like 20 or 50 of them, right? They don't smell that bad. They'll scratch around your lawn. We have a bunch of dogs. We love animals. We have 3 dogs and 3 cats. They eat all the insects. Like, we basically stopped getting fleas and ticks.
No kidding. Hey, Kevin, hold on a second.
Ticks especially, yeah.
Arden's calling me, and she's got to go to urgent care for something. Give me a second. I apologize. Hold on. Hey, how are you? I am, but I'm paused. What do you need? There's a church across the street, apparently, where you can park. You might have to go around a big block and come back again. Just keep... All right, so put it back in your nav and follow it again. Oh, okay. And there's no street parking? Then let's find the church address for you, because maybe that'll help you get to it. Okay. And there's a church there and you can't just turn into it? Just take your time. Okay. All right. I'll be done recording probably like 20 minutes, okay? Go get checked in. Bye. Sorry. Arden she's in an art school, and she's been drawing for like a week straight. And she woke up yesterday and her neck was really stiff and her shoulder was stiff. And she's like, it was bad, but it was okay. And she's like, and this morning I woke up and it feels like there's a rock in my shoulder and I can't turn my head. And we were like, all right, well, you might need like a muscle relaxer or something like that to help you out. So this is her going to urgent care for the first time on her own. And she's not good at street parking. So she's like, there's no street parking. I can't turn my head. And the place across the street, they said we could park at the church. I can't figure out how to get into. And then just all of a sudden she goes, oh, wait, I'm in. I almost killed everybody, but I'm in here now. I'm like, okay. so she's heading in now.
It is beautiful to hear your little tales. And I almost feel like I've heard her grow up a little bit listening to the podcast for years, right?
Isn't that strange?
Having an 18-year-old, I totally get it.
Yeah.
They call you and they're like, what do I do? And
it's this morning, like the text comes this morning. Hey, are you guys awake? And I said, I am. Are you checking on us? And she goes, my neck hurts. And we're like, and that feeling, Kevin, that like, she's like 13 hours away. She's like, I know she can handle this. Like she'll be okay, but she's never had to before. So she's working that out too, and that horrible feeling of like, oh, if I was there, I could help her. And so, yep. I've just been trying to walk her through it. And I actually had a moment this morning where I felt kind of grateful. Like, it's interesting. I have no religious background, but I'll talk like you'll hear me talk and think that I must. But I felt really grateful this morning that just all this technology existed in regards to like communication, like how quickly we were able to talk to each other. And then, if texting wasn't adequate, we could look at each other and like, it's just really, it's a big deal. Like, because 15 years ago, my parents would have said, or excuse me, all those years ago when I was Arden's age, my parents would have been like, I don't know, figure it out.
Right.
Like, I don't know what to tell you. Right. You know what I mean? Now it's like, oh, do this. There's a place up the street you can go. And
let me look on Google Maps. All right. Do you see that green sign over there on the right?
Exactly.
On the street view.
And she goes, but Dad, they don't take insurance. I said, that's fine. Just pay cash and we'll submit it to the insurance later. And even that, like being able to say that is a big deal, So anyway, she's going to be fine, but it's like,
and they need to figure some stuff out.
Right, 100%. Oh my God. Because that's the other side of all this is that this stuff can make everything so easy that nobody knows how to like get into a scrap and, throw some hands with life and get through it. It's been very good. I was even happy. I miss my son a lot, but I'm happy that he moved out because he's having experiences and figuring things out. And
he's spreading his wings.
Yeah,
right?
It's what it is.
Learn how to fly on his own.
It's what it is. All right, now speaking of learning how to fly, the chicken won't fly away. So that I don't have to worry about. But I do need a fence.
Yep, you need a fenced area. Your fence needs to be about 4 feet high. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't put a rail on top of it because they like to perch and they'll fly up to the rail.
Okay.
And they scratch around and they peck all the stuff. They eat little leafy green things and they eat little critters and they fertilize, right? So you'll have beautiful green grass.
That's it. And I get a free egg once a day.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
All right, I'm in. I'll do it.
It's fun.
Where do I buy a chicken? Chickens are us? That's not a thing, right? Does Amazon have them?
There are places that mail order the chicks. You have to raise them. Or you go to like if you Google feed store, I don't know where you live, but more rural areas have feed stores. If you have Tractor Supplies near you, that kind of store typically has like spring chicks that they sell, and they're only a couple of bucks each, and you buy a bag of feed for them and you have a waterer and that's it. You feed and water them. Make sure they got a heat lamp when they're little for a couple of weeks.
And they can live in the cold in the winter and all that?
Yeah.
They don't need a living room or carpets or anything like that?
No. I have a wood chip floor for them. They live in a barn.
That's amazing. All right.
Yeah. You got to get your eggs sooner. Right? If it's going to be below zero, you better go pick those eggs up before dinner or they're going to freeze solid because they stop laying on them and then they go to roost.
Oh, no kidding. And are they going to like pull out their feathers and go crazy ever? Because I don't know what to do if that happens.
I don't keep roosters. Roosters are the bosses. They tend to create what they call a pecking order and they'll peck the less desirable ones. So I just keep a bunch of females around and that's how we do it.
Just occurred to me, I know what Tractor Supply is because of Yellowstone. Do you watch Yellowstone?
Oh, cool. I do not. I do not.
Tractor Supply seems to be the biggest ad supporter of Yellowstone.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? Because you said Tractor Supply, and I'm like, I know what that is, but why do I know what that is? All right.
That's funny.
So, Kevin, is there anything we haven't talked about that we should have?
I don't know. I think we covered a lot of ground. I was just, like I said, really grateful for what you've done and shared with the world and how much it's made a difference to me. And I just wanted to be part of that, give back a little bit.
That's very kind of you. I appreciate it. I find in the end, most people want to come on just to spread what they've learned or what they've been through. And it's really valuable. So I appreciate you taking the time to do it. Thank you.
You bet, man.
Yeah.
You bet.
Hold on one second.
Thanks again.
No,
Keep
it's
up the good work.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Hold on one second. How about Kevin coming on and giving us that great interview? Thank you so much, Kevin. And thank you, US Med, for sponsoring this episode of the Juicebox Podcast. Once again, 888-721-1514 or usmed.com/juicebox. Whether you use the phone number or the link, you're going to reach people who are waiting for you, Juicebox Podcast listeners, to contact them. Don't let them just sit there all bored. 888-721-1514 or usmed.com/juicebox. If you're interested in what's going to happen on episode 1000 of the podcast, stay tuned. I've been using an editor for the podcast recently. I just got so far behind and I found the perfect fit with a really professional, great person, somebody who's involved with type 1 diabetes, and just a great fit. It does wonderful work. Anyway, I was talking to Rob one day and I said, is there anything you could do about the horrifying audio in some of the pro tip series? Actually, like the first 15 or 20 episodes are kind of janky. And Rob did an amazing job on them. So for episode 1000, we are going to re-release the Pro Tip series, the Diabetes Pro Tip series from the Juicebox Podcast, starting at episode 1000. And I'm going to put them out in order, 1000, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up. There's 26 of them. Now, I know what you're thinking. Scott, are you going to release the podcast 26 days in a row like that? I'm not. But I do want to keep the episodes together numerically. So what I'm going to do is, starting with episode 1000, I think for the first week, you'll get the first 4 or 5 episodes of the Pro Tip series, depending on how the calendar lines up. And then when we get to the weekend, I'm going to put out all of the episodes over the weekend. So if we get out, the first 4, then the next 21 are going to come like every couple of hours over the weekend to fill up your podcast player. You can listen to them or don't listen to them. But the idea is that in the future, when people are trying to find them and we're referencing where they are, they'll be together. Episode 1000, episode 1026 is the Diabetes Pro Tip series. Anyway, the audio is way, way improved. Rob's a magician. I think you're going to love it. If you've listened to the Pro Tip series already, I'll tell you what, listening through again is never a bad idea. I listen to them sometimes. They remind me about stuff. And if there's a person in your life who you've been thinking about telling about the podcast, this might be a really terrific time to introduce them. Once there was a time when I just told people, if you want a low and stable A1C, just listen to the Juicebox Podcast. But as the years went on and the podcast episodes grew, it became more and more difficult for people to listen to every one. So I made the Diabetes Pro Tip series. This series is with me and Jenny Smith. Jenny is a certified diabetes care and education specialist. She's also a registered and licensed dietitian and a type 1 herself for over 30 years. And I, of course, am the father of a child who was diagnosed at age 2 in 2006. The Pro Tip series begins at episode 210 with an episode called Newly Diagnosed or Starting Over. And from there, all about MDI, pre-bolusing, insulin pumping, bumping and nudging, variables, exercise, illness, injuries, surgeries, glucagon, long-term health, bumping and nudging, how to explain type 1 to your family, postpartum, honeymoon, transitioning, all about insulin, temp basals. These are all different episodes. Setting your basal insulin, fat and protein, pregnancy, the glycemic index and load, and so much more, like female hormones and weight loss. Head now to juiceboxpodcast.com. Go up in the menu at the top and click on Diabetes Pro Tip. Or if you're in the private Facebook group, there's a list of these episodes right in the featured tab. Find out how I help keep my daughter's A1C between 5.2 and 6.2 for the last 10 years without diet restrictions. If you have type 2 or pre-diabetes, the Type 2 Diabetes Pro Tip series from the Juicebox Podcast is exactly what you're looking for. Do you have a friend or a family member who is struggling to understand their type 2 and how to manage it? This series is for them. 7 episodes to get you on track and up to speed. Episode 860, Series Intro. 864, Guilt and Shame. Episode 869, Medical Team. 874, Fueling Plan. Episode 880, Diabetes Technology. Episode 885, GLP-1s, metformin, and insulin. And in episode 889, we talk about movement. This episode is with me and Jenny Smith. Of course, you know Jenny is a certified diabetes care and education specialist. She's a registered and licensed dietitian, and Jenny has had type 1 diabetes for over 30 years. Too many people don't understand their type 2 diabetes, and this series aims to fix that. Share it with a friend or get started today. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back very soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast.